Tween Connection Talks, where we bring you insight from the experts who can help you navigate life with teens and tweens. I'm Clarissa Constantine, your host and founder of the ParenT Tween Connection. I've worked with teenagers and their families for more than 20 years, and I believe that the more supported and knowledgeable their parents and members of the proverbial village feel, the better they can connect with and advocate for their teens and tweens. And ultimately, that means we'll lose fewer kids to suicide. So join us as ParenT Tween Connection talks about anything and everything teen and tween related. And when we're done, we invite you to come on over to our Facebook group to continue the conversations. Evynne Fair is a criminal defense attorney at Oakmont Law Group here in Colorado. She brings a unique background as both a social worker and a law enforcement officer to her practice, especially when it comes to supporting youth offenders. Today, Evynne talks about teens, phones, and sex. It's an incredibly important topic for parents, even if you don't want to think about it. The reality is, kids are thinking about sex younger and younger, and when you mix in technology and phones, it can be a recipe for trouble. Welcome, Evynne Fair.
Awesome. Thank you, Clarissa. All right, so just to kind of give everyone a little bit of a background on myself. So I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Aurora, Colorado, but some of my background that's relevant to the topic is that I worked as a law clerk for Denver Juvenile Court for 2 years before entering private practice. And what that means is I was basically an assistant attorney to all of the judicial officers. So we had 3 judges and 3 magistrates that I worked for there. So I was exposed to the juvenile justice system here in Colorado through that. Before I became an attorney, I was in law enforcement in Nevada for 8 years, and I was an investigative caseworker for Child Protective Services for 2 years. So I've had some experience throughout my careers dealing with some of these issues of teens, phones, and sex. And so that's kind of my background. So let's kind of dive right in. First of all, being an attorney, I have to give you this disclaimer. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado. I'm not licensed in any other states. So laws, if you're listening to this and you're in another state, just be aware that laws may vary in your jurisdiction. Nothing in this presentation shall be construed as legal advice. This is just me and my background trying to help you as parents navigate this growing issue of sexting and teens and the consequences that come with that.
And that's actually something with ParenT Tween Connection in general is that, as we bring all of our professionals on, we're not here offering personalized, professional client insight. It's here's things to consider. Here's information to help you decide as a parent what the next best step is to find the resources that are appropriate for you.
Exactly. So, and that's a great segue into my next point is that every case has to be evaluated on its own merits by an attorney licensed in your jurisdiction. So this might get people thinking, but if you feel like there is some legal issues that you're dealing with your teenager, definitely call an attorney that's licensed in your jurisdiction. If you don't know of an attorney, I'm always happy to talk with you and I can help research attorneys in your area. And then just the last thing is, nothing in this presentation is going to create an attorney-client relationship between me and anyone who's watching it. It's hopefully just some information to kind of get everyone thinking.
Right.
All right. So what is sexting? I think most of us have a pretty good idea of what it is, but it's probably good to kind of get a formal definition there. Basically, it's the sending, receiving, forwarding of sexually explicit or sexually suggestive nude or semi-nude images or videos, usually through a cell phone. That's your most common way of sexting. The most common scenario that we're seeing is teens are taking pictures of themselves when they're nude or nearly nude, and then they're sending that photo to others. Often what's happening is they're sending it to one person, and then somehow that photo is getting passed on to other people, depending on the situation. And the reason why it's become such an issue is that modern technology has made the exchange of sexual material easier than ever. So first we had the internet, but back in when internet first came around, remember that it was dial-up, so that wasn't a real easy way to exchange sexual material.
Indeed.
But then we got cell phones, and so cell phones made the internet more accessible to everyone. And then cell phones came with cameras, and they came with really good cameras. And so that is where this has evolved. And then you have social media, which I think is kind of the driving force sometimes of people's teenagers need to share the sexual material because they're exposed to so much through social media. So,
well, and there's also the idea, I know, I mean, you know, I've worked with teenagers for over 20 years too, and they're like, oh, well, the snap goes away, like if they're on Snapchat. And it's like, well, number one, no, it doesn't. It's still living on their servers somewhere somehow. And number two, like the snap itself may disappear from your story.
yes.
But if somebody took a screenshot of it,
Yep.
you don't know that they took the screenshot of it. It still exists. Let's be clear.
Yes. Yes. And, you know, I know Snapchat has put things in place where you get a notification if someone's taken a screenshot. But okay, now you know that someone's taken a screenshot, but you still can't control where that goes. And the other thing is, if you can take a picture of it with another device. Right. And then no one will never know that you took a photo of it. So yeah, it's really scary how technology has kind of made this thing kind of blow up. But the good thing is there, and I'll talk about it at the end of my presentation, there's ways to kind of prevent the disasters that can come from teenagers and sexting. So I don't want people to hear this presentation and all of a sudden freak out that all their children are sexting and, you know, and it's the world's ending because of the sexting. That's not it at all. This is mostly to educate you so you can have those conversations with your children earlier and sooner rather than later before things go bad. So, all right, so these are things that I found interesting because I probably could have told you about maybe 30% of these, and the rest of them I had no idea. So I figured parents could probably benefit from a list of some of the common platforms that teenagers are using for sexting. So we have the texting apps, right? So that can either be through just your messaging or your iMessaging on an iPhone, or there's these apps that are called WhatsApp, GroupMe, Kick Messenger, Discord. And I didn't feel like I could do a whole presentation on the dangers and pitfalls of all of these. I am happy to provide that information too as a resource of what to look for in these because they have different features that are dangerous. Photo and video sharing apps, you've got Instagram, TikTok, which is the real short videos that we're all seeing, Facebook, obviously, and then Snapchat. And Snapchat's are a particular concern because teenagers think that they disappear, like you were talking about, Carissa, and there's no such thing as something never disappearing. I mean, the minute you send it out into the internet universe, it's out there.
Indeed.
I couldn't even tell you where it could possibly go. I'm sure a computer forensic person could tell us exactly how that works, but so that's really scary, and it's a false sense of security for a lot of teenagers. So then we have what's called microblogging apps and sites. Those are your Tumblrs and your Twitters. You have your live streaming video apps, which are becoming popular even more now with stay-at-home orders across the country.
Correct.
But they were there before. House Party, which is a group video chat, Live.me, which is live video streaming, YouNow, which is like a broadcast chat, you know, watching live video platform.
And then I haven't even heard of some of these, so I'm sure that there's parents that haven't heard of them as well.
Yeah, that's why I figured it's, you know, and parents can take these and they can maybe go look them up, you know, themselves.
Absolutely.
Too. So then we go back to the self-destructing / secret apps. And when it says self-destructing, what that means is that the users are, you know, the picture goes out and then they can only view it for a certain amount of time and then it self-destructs. But as we talked, that's a misleading term. And that's your Snapchat and your Whisper. Whisper is an anonymous type blog app. However, I've been told that there's ways that they can still identify people through that, so that can be dangerous. And then you have the chatting, meeting, and dating apps and sites that teens are using, which I had never heard of any of these. Monkey, Meet Me, Omegle, Yubo, Amino. I mean, I've never heard of those at all.
Right.
So,
and actually,
I'm sure there's more.
Let me add one in. I know this because of conversations that we've had in the Parent Tween Connection Facebook group. One of our moms, her kiddo was going through some pretty tough stuff and was using Snapchat. And there's a plugin, I think it is, for Snapchat called YOLO, which allows for anonymous commentary within Snapchat. And that goes into this particular circumstance that I'm referring to was actually
bullying.
more of a cyberbullying thing, which I know that's
Sure.
going to be, you know, what you're going to talk about for our Parent Tween University subscribers. But just parents, that's another little app, an add-in on or plug-in or whatever it is on Snapchat to pay attention to, you know, to know what's going on in your kids' phones.
Yeah, absolutely. It's scary. It really is scary. So yeah, so these are, like I said, this is probably not an exhaustive list, but just kind of those ones that have been identified as problems for teenagers potentially. So let's talk about some research, because I think I'm a science-minded person, so I like to kind of know the facts of what's really going on with sexting. And these were 2 studies that I was able to find. I apologize, I didn't get the dates in there, but they're fairly recent. The University of Utah's Department of Psychology, they did a survey of 606 teenagers between 14 and 18. 20% of them admitted to sending a sext at some point in their life. 40% admitted to receiving a sext. And then 25% of those receiving admitted to forwarding it, which that's going to be relevant when I talk about the consequences. And so those are significant numbers.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good amount. So, and then a third of them admitted that they hadn't thought of the legal ramifications and the consequences. And that's exactly what's happening. They're, you know, teenagers are impulsive. We all know that. And I think this is a perfect example of what's happening with that. So then we go over to University of Texas medical branch. They said that 28% of the teens they looked at had admitted to sending a text. So that's, you know, they're fairly similar percentages across the board. 76.2% of teens who are propositioned to sex admitted to having had sexual intercourse. So I think what they're trying to show there is that there's some sort of correlation. Potentially. That, you know, correlation doesn't mean causation, so let's keep that in mind. That could just be the times right now. I don't know. Girls were asked to send a sext, 68% of them more often than boys, where they were only asked to send 42% of the time. And then the peak age of sexting is between 16 and 17. It seems to start out low the younger they are, and then it peaks at 16 to 17, and then as they get closer to 18, it tends to drop off. And I think that just has to go with brain science and their brain maturing a little bit. Because then they said that
2 out of 3 girls are asked to send a sext.
Yeah, pretty scary.
Wow. Okay.
And of course, this is only one study. They did not release, or at least where I found how many teens were surveyed for this study. So, you know, you always have to keep those, always look at statistics with
well, and I think it's also important to recognize that, like, yes, you're here in Colorado, I'm based here in Colorado, and, you know, many of the laws I imagine across the US are pretty consistent, right? But
actually, they're a little bit different. They're trying to get consistent, but some states are behind the curve. So,
well, there's that. But then there's also an aspect where a lot of our members in our Facebook group are international. You know, I know we have members in Canada, we have members in Australia, we have members in New Zealand.
Sure.
And these, I imagine, I mean, the technology isn't all that different from, you know, US to Canada or Canada to Australia, right? That, like,
right.
I imagine that these are, like, to your point of, like, the first study was done in Department of Psychology. Like, this is research coming out of, you know, the psychology, the medical branch of our worlds, that speaks to human development, and that these patterns are not just American patterns, but that they are probably consistent elsewhere as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's, I don't have the statistics or whatnot, but I'm pretty sure it's an accepted notion that teenagers are curious about sex naturally, right? That's their prime years of puberty and their sexual development. And so right there, they're already curious. And then now we live in an age of technology where they can have sexual material at their fingertips. And I think so you're right. I think it's a worldwide concept, because it's a human thing. It's a human element. It's not a, you know, country by country issue. So,
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nothing, no.
So let's, so I think parents also ask a lot of times, hold on, let me get my thing to advance. It didn't want to do it. Let's see. There we go. So why are our teens sexting? They're curious. Like I said, sex, it creates curiosity, which we all know from the dawn of man has led to probably exploration and experimentation. And this isn't a new thing. It's just a new platform for how to do it. And I think this platform has some dangerous aspects of it that weren't there before with other things. They might feel peer pressured. I think a lot of teens are responding, they're participating in sexting because they're being pressured by other teenagers, by their friends to do it. For example, if you're a guy and all of your guy friends have nude photos of their girlfriends, well, then you might feel pressured that that's something that you need to do. On the flip side, if you're a girl and other girls are bragging about sending their nude photos, you might feel pressured to participate. I mean, it's your typical peer pressure that teenagers are always susceptible to. Right. They might be in love, there's that first love. They might be sharing these photos with someone that they think they're in love with or they are in love with. But again, you have to assume the minute you send that to somebody, there's other people that could get a hold of it.
Indeed.
So, and then finally, they're probably just not thinking. One of the things that parents of teenagers need to be aware of, or just in general, is the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is this front part of your brain, is responsible for decision-making, problem-solving, knowing right and wrong. Well, that, unfortunately, is the last part of the brain to mature, and it's usually not even mature until you're about 25. So if you think about teenagers running around with an immature prefrontal cortex, they're just not thinking. I'm not even trying to be insulting to our teenagers, but I think that's just
biology.
The fact. Yeah, it's just biology. It's just how it works. So I think that's the big reasons why they're probably doing it. So let's talk about consequences of sexting. And I want to talk about obviously I'm an attorney, so I can talk a lot about the legal consequences. But I think above and beyond the legal consequences, I think parents need to understand and they need to educate their teenagers about the emotional consequences. Mm-hmm. So sexting can often backfire, and images, especially when images and videos get into the wrong hands. And I think we've all heard through the media about revenge porn. So if any of this is videos of teenagers having sex, and they break up with someone, that person could then use these videos against them, mm-hmm. To punish them. You have what they're calling sextortion. So it's extortion using sexting, and they will basically hold, and it kind of ties into the blackmail. They'll either hold those photos hostage and threaten to release those photos to the school or, the whole college campus or whatnot, mm-hmm. if you don't do something. And so that's kind of how it can really backfire. And one of the things we're going to talk about for the Parent Tween University stuff is sexting can lead into cyberbullying. If you think of revenge porn, sextortion, blackmail, that's pretty much cyberbullying.
Oh, yeah.
So they're easily tied together. And a lot of times, if it's cyberbullying that has to do with sexting that they've openly participated in, they won't go get help for that cyberbullying because they're embarrassed, they're fearful of getting in trouble, and they're shamed about what they did. And so it can make it worse.
And I think that's a really important point. One of my big platforms, if you will, or big things that I'm really big about working with families on is going like, look, we need to create safe spaces for kids to come to us. Whether we're their parent, we're their step parent, we're their aunt or uncle, or we're another trusted adult. The way that we become that trusted adult is by being a safe space and really living the idea of like, okay, you made a mistake. You made a whopper of a mistake. And I'm still going to be here to help support you.
Absolutely.
If we break that connection with them before any of this stuff even happens, then this is the potential result of they're not going to come to me. And it's, I was a teenager who my mom said, oh, you can come to me about anything, but let me tell you what I wouldn't go to her about. Pretty much everything, because I didn't trust that she was that safe space. So
yeah, that's, I think, and I'll talk about that later. That's a really big thing that you And you need to build that trust and safe space early with your
Agreed.
teenagers, even before they're at the peak age of sexting, start
Absolutely.
educating them. They're smart. Teenagers, while they might not have a fully mature prefrontal cortex, preteens and teenagers, they're smart. They
Yeah.
can reason, they can figure that out, and it's helpful to get that out of the way sooner rather than later. One of the things that, and this is something that teenagers don't think about, is this type of stuff can compromise reputations. Photos and videos can resurface years later.
Absolutely.
So this could have impacts on employment. This could have impacts on getting into college. I think a lot of, and Clarissa, you could speak to this because you do a lot of help with admissions stuff. Colleges more and more, because they understand how technology works, they're researching students through their social media.
Well, and especially as more of the colleges, we're seeing more and more colleges going away from SAT and ACT as requirements, which is where my background is. They're looking at more holistic evaluations of students, and this is absolutely becoming more and more of a consideration. They're looking at language, they're looking at, hey, are kids participating in illicit activity, not just sexting, but like, are they posting pictures of themselves drinking or whatever, something that they shouldn't be doing as teenagers. Yeah, you're absolutely right, they are looking.
Yep. And we live in it, and I know there's that joke that goes around all the time, like, thank God I didn't grow up in the age of Facebook where everything was documented, right? Because it's true. I mean, I it's a joke and it's funny, but there's some real truth to that, because we have teenagers who are growing up in the age of Facebook and Instagram, and that need to document every stage of their life. And so, in addition to sexting, they're posting other things that they probably shouldn't be posting. Heck, I look back at stuff I posted on Facebook when it first came out, when I was in college, and I just shake my head at some of the things I was talking about on Facebook. So we've all done it. I think it's just, there's some extra hurdles that we have to worry about with current technology. So then the last one, and this one, it really hits home for me. When I worked in social services and as a law enforcement officer, and even doing work with the Denver Juvenile Court, human sex trafficking with teenagers in the United States is a big problem, and it's a problem that's not talked about enough. And I can tell you right now, sexting, especially on these sites where you're sending nudes out to strangers potentially that you think are other teenagers, this is allowing our teenagers to be exposed to sexual predators and pedophiles, and opening themselves up to being victims of human sex trafficking. And again, I don't want this presentation to be alarmist. I don't want this presentation to make everyone panic, but we definitely need to realize that my stepdaughter ran into this when she was on Twitter. She got to chatting with a guy on Twitter that she thought was a teenager in a high school, in a different high school in the town that we lived in. And come to find out, he's, a 40-some-year-old man who's a sexual predator. And so, and she just didn't think of that, and they know how to groom them. They know how to talk to these teenagers. And so that's where I really worry, because that really could harm our teenagers' physical safety. And that's, I think, should be every parent's priority. And it's all about education. We're not going to be able to protect our teenagers from everything, but we can educate them so that they can hopefully help protect themselves. So that's the emotional consequences. The legal consequences, Clarissa, you were talking about most states are on board with sexting. And while all states recognize that sexting is an issue, what I can say is in all 50 states, there's some sort of law enforcement charge for sexting between minors. The problem is that some of the states, and I don't have the exact numbers because a lot of it's not very current. Most of the stuff I could find had been a few years old. And at some point, I probably should just go through on my own and kind of figure out what states are doing what. But I didn't have time in preparation for this to do that. But what's really scary is some states are, they have criminal charges for minors who are exchanging sexual images, and they understand that it's a teenage thing, it's an impulsive thing. They're not trying to be harmful. They're not trying to harm anyone, and so they're taking a very rehabilitative approach. So there's some punishment, but it's more about how can we educate them and prevent them from doing this. There are other states, though, where if you are in possession or exchanging or forwarding images of a minor, even if you're a minor yourself, you could be charged with child pornography charges, which are felonies and require those children to register as sex offenders for the rest of their life. So like I said, parents, you definitely need to make sure you understand what the laws are in the state that you live in or the country that you live in, because talk about long lasting impact if you get charged with a child pornography charge because of you sent a nude photo to your boyfriend or girlfriend and whatnot, or if you receive one and you're in possession of it and you didn't ask to receive it but you're in possession of it. Some states are criminalizing that. And here's the other thing, we have high school students that are 18, right? So we have and the minute you turn 18, your consequences could potentially be even more serious.
And that's something that I've definitely seen, when you've got, a couple where one is 17 and one turns 18, things change from a legal perspective. And, and it's like, okay, maybe you are in a consensual relationship now. Sure. Maybe you are high school sweethearts. Maybe you are going to end up getting married and living forever together. Like, great, more power to you. But that doesn't change the fact from a legal perspective that if it's one partner is 17 and one partner is 18, if you get caught, consensual or otherwise, that's a big problem.
Yep, and depending on what state you're in, if you get caught with a nude photo of your girlfriend or boyfriend and you're 18, I mean, you're in the deep end at this point of the pool. You're no longer in the kiddie pool, right? And it can be serious. So parents should definitely educate themselves on what the sexting laws are in their state or their country. Other thing is in some states and countries, parents can be found civilly liable for anything that happens as a result of, let's say what their teenager forwarded a nude photo that he received of a student to a bunch of other students because he was asked to do that and he was peer pressured to do that, or she was. And then that poor teenager, suffers from severe emotional harm. And, there's a lot that can happen. That parent of that teenager who helped propagate that could potentially be civilly liable for the harm done to the subject of that photo.
The other kiddo. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's scary. And like I said, this is just to educate. I don't want parents to freak out because it's all about education and knowledge is power, right? So this is what this is about. Knowledge is power. So I wanted to, because I'm a Colorado attorney, I'm obviously more familiar with Colorado. I wanted to give a snapshot of what Colorado is doing to handle sexting, because this tends to be the trend of what other states are trying to move towards. Okay. And so Colorado has basically split up sexting by minors into 3 categories. There's posting, there's possession, and there's exchanging. So posting is if you knowingly, this teenager has to know that they are distributing, displaying, or publishing images of another who is at least 14 or is less than 4 years younger without permission. So again, this is your between teenager sexting. They knew or should have known that the depicted person had a reasonable expectation of privacy. And I think and again, teenagers probably don't think of this. So it's parents' jobs to educate them about what these things mean.
Absolutely.
If you get charged for posting a nude image of a minor and you're a minor, it's a class 2 misdemeanor. So that's misdemeanors in Colorado. The most serious misdemeanor, which is right below a felony, is a class 1. Then you have your class 2, and then you have your class 3. So this is middle of the road seriousness for misdemeanors. There can be an enhancement if it was done to intimidate, coerce, threaten, cause emotional damage. So if they were trying to be malicious in their posting, it can bump that up. And you can read about kind of the different ways that it gets bumped up. The other thing is if you possess the photo, right? So if you knowingly have possession, an image of another minor without permission, it's a petty offense. So penalty-wise, it's not very serious. but it can be enhanced to a class 2 misdemeanor if you have 10 or more images depicting 3 or more separate persons, because now you're, I guess you could call it a connoisseur of your classmates' nude images, which is terrible to say.
At the very least, you're collecting.
Yes, exactly, which is a problem and definitely should be addressed more seriously. And then the last one's exchanging, and this one doesn't have any criminal penalties, but it's just this is your what we're considering our consensual exchanging. Okay, so this is 2 minors who consent to exchange images. You can still be in trouble for that. It's a civil infraction, which usually means it's just like a fine. But, you could be required to participate in different classes and programs, which is not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. It helps educate them so that they don't move up to those bigger levels, right? The possession and the posting. So one thing that to be, aware of is there are still felony charges available in Colorado if there's aggravating circumstances. But the good news is that they still can't charge juveniles with child pornography charges in Colorado if they're a juvenile, which that is huge. Good. The other thing that I want parents to be aware of, because this is something they can educate their children about, in Colorado, it's an affirmative defense. What that means is if you get charged with any of these, but you went to a school resource officer, or you went to your principal, or you went to some school official and you tried to tell them what was happening, that you were receiving these photos and you didn't want to receive these photos. And, if you reach out and try to fix the problem, then you will never be charged with any of these because it's an affirmative defense. So what they're trying to do is incentivize kids to do the right thing when they inadvertently get part of a text chain or an email chain, because that's what happens is these kids inadvertently get put on these chains that they don't want to be on, and
right.
We don't want them to get in trouble for that, right? So that's good. So that's something that's good. So this is how Colorado's handling sexting. A lot of other states are handling it in a very similar manner, and let's hope in the next few years that all 50 states and other countries will follow this same suit, because we don't want these kids to have long-lasting consequences if they were just being stupid. Now, if they're being malicious and they're using it to cyberbully, that's a little bit different, and that's why there's still those criminal charges available for those kids.
Well, and I like to know, just as a citizen here in Colorado, that, and especially as a citizen who works with teenagers, that I can at least take to them, hey, if you receive something, like, your parents may not be thrilled, but it's still better for you to share it with, your parents, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a school safety officer, a school resource officer, because that way you're at least taking the action to be like, dude, I didn't want it. I didn't expect it. I want to be safe. Like, even if your parents get upset that it's going on, right? Like, it's safer for you to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's good. I like that they incentivize that. The other thing too so these charges, the posting and possession, those, you can still have to register as a sex offender with those charges, but the judge has discretion to not require you to register. So, and usually they will make these children or these teenagers go through some sort of sexual offender evaluation to see is this a teenager not thinking and just falling into peer pressure, or is this a teenager who is having, issues and with sex and how they see sex and those kinds of things, and and let's get the intervention now while they're young, and then they won't be a problem as an adult. So that's good too. So let's talk about, I think what all parents are going to want to know at this point is, what can I do as a parent? Mm-hmm. The first thing that I have on there is, don't make sex a taboo topic. Yes, it's an awkward conversation to have with your children, but the more you have it, the less awkward it'll be. The more comfortable you'll get, the more comfortable your teenager will get, and the more likely they will come to you if they find themselves in a position where they feel pressured or like they're going to start sexting. Mm-hmm. And that goes into what we've already talked about, Carissa, too. create a safe environment in your home for your teens to have open dialogue. I mean, this is huge. And don't just say that it's safe. Actually take actions that show, your teenager that it is safe for them to have an open dialogue with you, and start the dialogue early. Of course, make sure it's age appropriate conversations, but start it early so that they're fully equipped when they go into middle school and high school, about what those boundaries are, and that it's not okay for someone to ask you to send them a nude photo of yourself, right? And check in with them regularly to answer questions and be supportive. They're not always going to just come to you, sometimes you've got to be the one to open up that dialogue. So, and the next one, this one, I want to caution parents. So yes, you need to monitor what your teens are doing with technology, but don't go overboard. And the reason why I say that is, if you go overboard on monitoring every little thing that they do, you've now destroyed the trust that you've created before with that safe environment for open dialogue, because they feel spied on. So, it's a fine line. I can't tell you what that fine line looks like, but just, you don't want to be, spying on your teenagers, so to speak. You just need to be monitoring.
Well, and that fine line can vary from kiddo to kiddo as well.
Exactly.
We've all seen families where there are two kids or more from the same parents, like the same biological parents, who have such different personalities and different tendencies. And it's okay to have, different approaches with different kids, meet them, where they need to be met.
Yeah. And I think that's key, and here's something to think of. This is the way I kind of think of it. Part of what happens with sexting, especially when a teenager is being pressured to sex by another teenager, what is happening there? Their privacy is being invaded, correct? So if you as a parent don't teach them that privacy is an important thing, then you come off as a hypocrite to them. So that's where you have to have some sort of you have to allow your teenager to have some sort of privacy. And you're right, Clarissa, that might be different for every teenager. But you do need to have that open dialogue where you can monitor what they're doing and then have a good conversation about what's happening or what you've found that doesn't make it seem like you are invading their privacy or attacking them. And I say that, and it's easier said than done. I know this is not an easy thing for parents to walk the line, but just even if you just keep that thought in the back of your head as you navigate these teenage years, I think you're going to be just fine with how you deal with your teenagers. I think it's the parents who don't even think of this that tend to run into problems, and it backfires. They're well-intentioned. They're trying to protect their children. All parents are trying to protect their children, right? That's a great and noble intention, but sometimes if it's not done right, it can backfire.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, I'm educating parents with this presentation, right? Knowledge is power. Well, guess what? Your teenagers benefit from education as well. So educate them about the dangers and the consequences associated with sexting. Absolutely. Most of them just don't know, and most of them don't think of it. So just educating them can be like, be that basically what you as a parent, your prefrontal cortex is mature. So kind of be that exterior prefrontal cortex for your teenagers and give them that information that they might not come up with on their own.
Absolutely. Well, and if I can add a thought in here too,
sure.
The concept of role playing is an interesting one, because a lot of times, we can sit here and we can tell our kids, just say no. But the reality is, to your point about peer pressure, we all feel it, even as adults. We want to be included. We want to be accepted. And just say no really doesn't work all the time. And so, to your point of having a conversation and being okay, where is your boundary? What do you feel comfortable with? What do you not feel comfortable with? What's the law say? Right? And then giving them some ideas of what are some language, what are some phrases that you can use to say, no, I'm not going to participate in that, and still save face and still not be the prude, right? Which, that's from even back in our day, right? Whatever technology is for them now, they don't want to be seen that way. We all want to be seen as cool and competent and part
Absolutely.
of the crew. So going through, asking questions. Hey, have you ever received a text like this? Or has anyone ever asked you? Or like, how did you respond? Or how would you respond? And giving them, like, to your point of like, we have the fully formed, hopefully, prefrontal cortex.
Hopefully. Yeah.
And helping them decide, like empowering them, like to think about it. Number one, think about the dangers, but also empowering them to be like, here's how I'm going to respond if and when it happens. Because if the studies, like if it's consistent that even 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 2 kids are propositioned for a sext, if your daughter isn't propositioned, her best friend probably was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody they know has been, if it's not them.
And so like, how can we empower them and support them to be ready for that? God willing, it hasn't happened yet. So
absolutely. Well, and I'm gonna go right to this next slide. So for teenagers, I put some things on there. There's a website called That's Not Cool, and it kind of helps teenagers navigate how to prevent cyberbullying, how to not participate in cyberbullying. But I think it helps with the sexting as well, because that's part of, you want to be cool. You want to be cool, and they need those tools to help with that. So that website is actually geared towards teens. It speaks to teens directly. The second one is the cyberbullying.org. That's your big, cyberbullying website. It has tons of research. And there's tons of stuff on cyberbullying.org for parents as well. But there is a page on there that's sexting advice for teens on how to deal with it. And then this next one for parents, I should have put the title of it, but it's basically a handbook for how to deal with sexting for teenagers. And it has awesome role playing and like what to say so that parents can use that when they're talking with, because I wouldn't know how to even start that conversation because I never had to deal with this when I was in high school. So I had to deal with other, like you were talking, like other things with sex, but not sexting, because I had a car phone that was about this big in my car that, I had for emergencies, but that was it. So that first one is a handbook on sexting for parents. It's amazing. And I think I read through it. I think you could give it to a high school teenager. I think they could read through it as well and get a lot of help from that too, if that's something that they would need. And then there's a cyberbullying.org page it's a brief guide for educators and parents on how to deal with sexting. Some of it goes over things I've gone over just on education, but it helps with how to approach it. And there's tons of stuff out there. This is just a small portion of what's out there, and so for resources.
For any of you who are listening via the podcast as opposed to watching on YouTube, what we'll do is we'll take these links and make sure that they're in the show notes. And honestly, even on YouTube, we'll make sure that they're in the description so that you can just click on them instead of having to come back to the workshop, just so that they're easily accessible. So
yeah. So so my next slide, my last slide, is basically my contact information. So I can be reached by phone 720-645-1123 or by email at it's Evynne, it's EV as in Victor YNNE at Oakmont, that's MONT lawpc.com. And I'm happy I can provide more resources. I can help find attorneys in your jurisdiction. Basically, I'm happy to chat with parents about whether it's legal issues or just sexting in general. I'm happy to chat with them about kind of what to do and what to look for. Well, so I think that kind of concludes our main program, or the main stuff I was going to cover, unless you had something else.
I just had one question for you. In the event that a kiddo does end up arrested.
Sure.
Right? Is it fair to say that the first thing that the parents need to do is contact an attorney?
Absolutely. These types of cases, as we talked about, they can have some serious consequences, and these are not the type of criminal charges that I would ever recommend parents and children to navigate on their own. I think there's a lot of, and the other thing too, some of these laws, especially in Colorado, those laws got passed in 2017. They're brand new. So, There's judges that need to be educated still on them, and a criminal defense attorney can help with that. And like I said, whether I'm able to help, if it's in Colorado or if you're in another state and you don't know who to call in your state, please reach out. To me. I'm happy to help you find an attorney in your jurisdiction. I have access to listservs and whatnot, and people know people everywhere. So I'm happy to help, but absolutely do not navigate these criminal charges without an attorney, because they have serious, serious consequences. And if your teenager is in high school and that teenager is 18, they are now going to be charged as an adult.
Right.
And that's a even more serious consequence. So, or you know what, even if your teenagers grow up and go to college, they're still, they're 19, 20. Yes, they won't be under the sexting laws that I talked about because they're no longer minors. But guess what? They're now going to be under the adult laws, and they are harsh, especially in Colorado. And I'm pretty sure they're harsh across all 50 states and other countries. So please, please get them an attorney. Like I said, it does not need to be me, but get them an attorney.
Find someone. Right.
Yeah, that's the message I want everyone to hear, is definitely get an attorney if your child gets charged with or arrested for any of these.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. And we're going to sign off here from our podcast. If you have not yet joined the Parent Tween University, you may want to consider doing that. It's a super low cost way to get access to even more insight from professionals like Evynne. And we are going to be heading on over there to have a conversation about cyberbullying. So if you haven't joined us, come on over to ParenTweenConnection.com. And with that, we will sign off. Well, that wraps up today's episode of Parent Tween Connection Talks. Be sure to check the show notes for any links we mentioned. Also, be sure to subscribe to Parent Tween Connection Talks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, so you don't miss out on any awesome information. If you'd like your own copy of the Foundations of Connection, you can find it right on our homepage at ParentTweenConnection.com. Print it out, hang it on your fridge, and use it as a conversation starter with the folks in your family today. And if you want to feel more supported as a parent and have a closer, healthier, happier relationship with the tween in your life, enroll in Parent Tween University. For just $19.99 a month or $199 a year, you'll join a community of parents just like you who are dedicated to having the best relationships they can with their kids. You'll receive exclusive bonus trainings from many of our podcast guests and access to monthly group coaching calls based on my signature coaching program, The Foundations of Connection. So go to www.ParentTweenConnection.com today to help ensure that you're the one your kids will talk to when they need someone they can trust. Until next time, keep talking and keep connecting.